Monday at about 3 o'clock. I had numbed my patient at 3 o'clock and just happened to be at the front desk talking to my office manager, Michelle, when we heard the loudest bang, boom, like explosion you've ever heard in your life. And I was like, immediately you start freaking out, like, what's going on? So we both ran outside and thought maybe someone had drove like an 18-wheeler or something into our building, because it shook our whole building. And didn't see a truck, and then I was like, did a building blow up? Like, it was crazy. So then I start immediately kind of hunker down, because I'm like, are we under attack? Like, I didn't know what was going on. And then we see all this smoke coming from kind of beside our office, and I look down and I see a man's legs laying there. And Michelle goes, did he get electrocuted? And his grandson was working with him and another worker, and they're screaming yes, and his grandson's on the phone dialing 911, and he runs over and hands Michelle the phone. He's like, I can't talk to them, that's my grandfather. So Michelle starts talking to them, and I assess the scene and immediately tell my staff to go get my crash bag and the AED and everything. And the man he worked with went over and started shaking him. And so then I knew that it was safe, because I didn't know if there was a live, wire on the ground or what was going on. So I didn't want to immediately run in. But when I saw the men touch him and shake him, I knew that moment it was safe. So I was like, immediately go into that like mode of, we've got to do everything we can to save this man's life. And he was laying there with his eyes open and his mouth open, and there was no life in his body. His whole body was just gray, and there was coagulated blood in his mouth. And I was just like, oh God, please, like, we've got to save this man's life. And so we hook him up to the AED and we start CPR, and I'm doing compressions, and the orthodontist next door to me starts doing bag valve mask respirations, and it alerts us that he needs a shock. And so we shock him and we start back in with CPR. And I'm just sitting there the whole time just praying, like, Lord God, let this man survive. And we got a pulse back, and he started breathing. And then EMS showed up, and they were like, who handled this case? I was like, I ran the code on him. And they were like, thank you guys so much, because you might have saved this man's life. And they got him into the ambulance, and I saw his grandson in the fetal position just bawling his eyes out. And so the thing that I'm most proud of is my staff and I went over and we prayed with him. And then come to find out later that he lived. He's survived. The fire chief came to our office to say thank you, and he told me in his 35 years that he's never seen a survival of an electrocution. And the boom that we heard was the truck exploded when they were hanging a sign, and it was really windy, and the rig of their truck had gotten too close to the power line, and the power line had swayed into their truck, and he was controlling the truck, and so it threw him about 10 feet back. And they said that had he not been on our street, and they said had the blonde dentist not been there, that he for sure would have died. And so I know without a shadow of a doubt that the Lord allowed me. Most of you guys are my patients. You know how crazy it is in my office. Like, I'm never at the front desk. I'm always working. And it just so happened in that moment that there was like just a very weird moment of time that I didn't have anything going on, and I was just waiting, and I was at the front and heard it and ran outside, and there was 100 people out there from all the different offices. The entire street heard it, came outside, and I went to the hospital and got to visit him, because I told my staff and everything, like, I needed to see his face alive, because I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I just see like the face of him laying there, lifeless, dead, and I needed to see him alive. And I got there, and his wife and daughters were just like, we are so thankful for you, and that the Lord put you there. And I found out he still needs prayer. He's back in the hospital with a severe infection. He may end up losing his whole foot. Because the electricity went out his foot, and so one of his bottoms of his foot had a giant hole in it, and it was cauterized from the electricity leaving there, but the other foot is severely infected, and they said for sure he's going to lose his toes on that foot, but he may end up losing his whole foot. So he still needs prayer, but he's alive, and I'm so thankful for that.